Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar, you're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to like, give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Fucking ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you. That was...
Welcome, everybody, to the Libertarian Podcast Review. Did a little Sunday edition. I thought I'd throw this out. It's hot. This is Tyler Yonke, by the way, episode 116. We're going to talk about RFK suing Google and YouTube. We're going to go over it a little bit. It's Sunday for, look, it's hot out where I'm at. I've already gone to the gym, already did a bike ride. My wife's out hanging out, doing something else. Kids are busy. Why not do this? So Andy, if you're out there, let me know, hit me up, and you come in with me. Okay. Look, I thought maybe I'll start real quick here with, I did a thing previously, a Substack, and talked about state action, this whole thing. And by the way, Angela McArdle just did a podcast with Joe Walsh. We're going to walk through that at some point as well. And Joe Walsh makes a point at the very end about businesses being able to do what they want to do, being able to dictate whatever they want to do. And he's talking about masks specifically, but you can't make that argument. And by the way, it was ridiculous. First he calls her alt-right, then he questions why she's having communists involved in the anti-war rally, which I agree with. I had problems with them as well, but you can't say, oh, you're alt-right, and then next thing you're communist, you're a bigot, and you're not condemning people. Why are you not more open to everybody's ideas? And then he goes on this rampage about, he says businesses should be able to do whatever they want. And so I just put a clip of that and I'm like, oh my God, Joe Walsh is against the Civil Rights Act like a true bigot. You can't, people, it's so fundamental here. You can't say a business can do whatever they want to do with masks or what have you, or political views, and then say they're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of race. So what is it going to be, people? And Joe Walsh is a contradictory issue the whole time. What's RFKF doing suing the animal shelter for snipping his vocal cords? Funny David and Minder says, is this live? No, it's that's my favorite comment of that. So I wrote this Substack, and it's a year or so ago, and we talked about, and I broke this down with the private company bro slur that's taken a nosedive. I said, and the more and more it's not even applicable to reality, as the state is more entwined with business and entangled with how a business conducts itself or how its terms of service are determined. Perhaps the problem is getting this message out to those willing to hear it. In the following clip, Facebook, Meta, robot Mark Zuckerberg discusses with Joe Rogan how the government influenced their site during the 2020 election and how they reacted to restricting publication on their platform. I'm not going to play that clip. You go there. That's one example. Likewise, Alec Berenson was kicked off of Twitter last year and subsequently sued the tech giant. Now, we've seen that with the Twitter files. It's come and gone. In addition, the state of Missouri has taken on, I think it's Facebook, Twitter, or the government specifically. I think the states have pushed back at saying there's a First Amendment right. There's too much entanglement. So there's a bunch of legality that's coming out with that as well. The point here is, if the White House is telling Twitter to ban Alex, or the FBI is giving hints to Facebook regarding Hunter Biden laptop story, then there are companies acting freely. And then the company's acting freely and without government influence. Legally, the courts have dealt with this issue before regarding government entanglement, or state action through private companies, and whether such involvement violates the First Amendment. And then break some cases down here. Here's the First Amendment thing. We'll just read it out. It's pretty clear. This Congress shall make no law. And that's the problem, right? So this is Congress shall make no law. So people are always like, First Amendment rights and all this stuff. Well, it's government action. And by the way, it should be we're talking about all these things with the Bill of Rights being incorporated and whatnot. It should be the federal government, and you're not at all about the states. States should be able to, you may not like this, but they should be able to violate the first, fifth, well, they did the fifth, all the amendments, right? First, second, third, all the amendments, states should be able to dictate what they want to. Now, almost every state has their own constitution. This is a strict legal, if Brian McClanahan type of view of not incorporating the Bill of Rights and whatnot. Accordingly, the Supreme Court in Edmondson v. Leesville in 1991 said, although the conduct of private parties lies beyond the Constitution's scope in most instances, governmental authority may dominate an activity to such an extent that its participation must be deemed to act with the authority of the government, and as a result be subject to constitutional restraints. Okay, so therefore, and I go on to it, I would suggest you check out my post there. It's pretty solid. And basically the idea there is, if people are, we could do this during our Minder. Good point. Did you see the tweet from Elon? Yes, we're going to talk about that as well. So my point here is you can push back a lot of times with these issues of private I'm all about private companies being in one and what they want to do. But we saw that with COVID, there was undue influence and entanglement to the point where you don't get the pure business being able to just act the way they want to. And once again, I said, you should be able to discriminate as you wish. You should be able to, in all kinds of ways, but not have concerns about the government coming in and push. And once the government is doing that, now you don't have this pure market system anymore. And so should you be able to sue these companies for violating your first, second, whatever amendment rights? Possibly. And then we're going to talk about. Now, Minder said, did you see the tweet from Elon? Yes, I did. Elon Musk said, basically, if you have lost your job due to a tweet you've done, contact us. We will take care of your attorney's fees, unlimited, no cost barrier, basically is what he said. I'm immediately out there. Hey, I'm an attorney. Now, this is a little ridiculous, right? This now it's a private company. He could do what he wants, but Elon, maybe don't just say it's unlimited, because you're going to have attorneys billing like crazy. You're going to have all kinds of suits coming out, and they're going to try to get this money, and it's going to be a whirlwind for attorneys. And I'm not sure that in the long run, the people that need to be reinstated or have protections of this are going to be the beneficiary, partly because what are you going to do? For most states, they're at will. Your employers can fire you for whatever reason they want, and if this is one that they want to do, they can fire you. You can go after them. I guess you could. What I'm not sure what the remedy is going to be to try to reinstate yourself as an employee for this. So retaliation. There are now, granted, there are all kinds of federal and state type of issues you can go after. You take them in federal court and go through the EEOC and all these different branches which help you, and you may get a somewhat of a settlement. But once again, the attorneys are going to be the ones lavishing themselves in all kinds of, what do you call it? Money. Okay. Robert F. Kennedy says, I'm suing for censoring me on YouTube. Kennedy 2024. And then we'll go here to a, let's get an article up here. Come on, Tyler. Kennedy suing, this is from his own website. Kennedy suing for political speech on YouTube, candidate presidential nomination. And see, that's part of the problem you have here with these companies, which is, are they violating election law? Are they violating some of the statutes that you might be out there for a public figure that is engaged in political running for office? By the way, Joe Walsh, once again, first thing he says to Angela, hey, Angela, you've run for public office 2 times. Nothing is more sacred and admirable than someone who runs for public office. And I'm like, what? I mean, I like Angela, but what are you talking about? Most scumbags are the ones that are in public office. Anyway, it just started out with the Joe Walsh thing. So we'll go with here. Kennedy alleges that Google worked with the federal government to develop and enforce misinformation policies to censor the government's political opponents, including Kennedy, who is running against Biden in the Democratic primary. Such actions violate the First Amendment when, as here, they result in public-private partnerships that rely on government sources. So that's part of your issue. Plus, you're having a Biden who's going to be running for re-election now using companies. This is really when it happens, when it's the federal government now. You can think of everything there streams down as Biden going towards punishing political adversaries. So that might be an act, and we'll read the complaint here. YouTube has become an important platform for political discourse in America, a digital town square that voters trust as a place to get news and opinions and issues of the day, a place where people can communicate about matters of public concern. I mean, dude, I'm on YouTube, and so's Tower Gang. Are we really going to say it's a place where voters trust? Anyway, nonetheless, Google has censored countless Americans for views that run counter to the narratives of the U.S. government. Kennedy is just the most high-profile victim of this censorship campaign. This degree of censorship as a major presidential candidate is unprecedented in American history. I don't know that it's unprecedented. I don't want to nitpick with all these things, but is it unprecedented? I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true. And I don't know anything offhand. I just can't imagine that this hasn't been done to different extents. Okay, so I'm not going to read that whole thing, but let's go to the complaint. Let's check this out and see what Kennedy's attorneys. Now, look, Kennedy, I had a quote. Maybe I should try to pull it up here, where he was on Reason and they were talking to him, and he comes out. This is a guy that's an attorney, okay? And he comes out and makes that. And you guys, I'm sure all my viewers, listeners here, and probably any of you are attorneys, and you you can yell fire in a crowded theater. That's been debunked. I think it was in 1969 that was overturned. It was the year, actually, I looked it up at one point. It was overturned the year Joe Biden graduated law school. Okay. So the year he graduates law school, this is a seminal case that comes out, turns this whole thing over, and that dumb fuck still says it. Robert Kennedy still says this kind of thing. And it blows my mind. It's like, first of all, just saying that, you're like, okay, does that actually make sense? For the most part, we know that you can say all kinds of things. In the First Amendment, Brandenburg v. Ohio, that's not the case that overturned it, though. I don't believe that. I'll double check that for me. Come on, David. You can be my law clerk at this point. Okay, let's go here. Well, you know what, Dave? Now, let's see here. Fire, crowded theater, overturned case. Is it Brandenburg v. Ohio? Shouting fire. It's time to stop the fire in the crowded theater. Oliver Wendell Holmes made that stupid comment. Blah, blah, blah. US v. Schenck had nothing to do with fires. I think that was the one. Maybe you're talking about the case that did. Debs v. US. Okay, 1969. You are right, David. David, you're right. Got to go, Minder. Thanks. Okay, see ya. Go. David is correct. He's my law clerk here. Perfect. He did it in 1969. The Supreme Court's decision in Brandenburg v. Ohio overturned Schenck and any authority the case still carried. There, the court held that inflammatory speech or even speech advocating violence by members of the Ku Klux Klan is protected under the First Amendment unless the speech is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such actions. David says, yeah, it is Ohio from looking at it. Okay. Yeah, you're right, David. Jeez. You too can be an attorney, but I don't know that you should be or want to be. That's just my point. Okay. Let's go to the complaint here. Oh, I didn't have the complaint up. Let's put it to this one. There we go. Here is the complaint. Okay, let's maybe make this a little bigger for all y'alls to see. Here we go. Sorry, I don't know how to necessarily get this to a place. All right, we'll just take it there. Okay, so Robert F. Kennedy gets his J.H. Howard attorneys from Pasadena. There's Mr. Street's email address if you guys want that. Attorney for Robert F. Kennedy. Plaintiff takes on Google and YouTube. Okay, they demand a jury trial. Complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief, which is just basically they want to stay at some point of something. And, we can break down what this is. This complaint concerns the freedom of speech and the extraordinary steps the United States government has taken under the leadership of Joe Biden, to silence the people it does not want Americans to hear. That is pretty heady. Look, David said, I sent that second before you found out. Shake my head. I'm not a smartass. It's just delay. No, why not? Why not be a smartass? If you're right, it's all fine. Look, so I am going to walk ourselves through this because I think this is interesting. And look, I do have problems with Robert F. Kennedy. I do have problems with the libertarians simping for him. And it cracks me up when, and I know there could be all kinds of, and I need someone to come on here prominent on this show and have a discussion with me about it. And I did a show a little bit earlier, a few months ago, about RFK. I said, is he a BFD or is he a problem? I have a lot of problems with him, especially economic wise. When I heard him on the Reason podcast, he's perfectly fine about a lot of things. Then he's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to outlaw advertisements. And I'm like, what? Dude, you just, you go down this route. I think his initial instincts are horrible on a lot of things. He comes around at some point, perhaps, but his initial instincts and his gut instinct is bad. By the way, and I know this is his dad and it's his uncle, RFK and JFK, they're, vaunted, it's his parent, it's his dad for Pete's sake, and it's his uncle, but they're shit. RFK was a gun grabbing piece of shit. JFK was a womanizing piece of shit. I'm not, and he lauds them and no one pushes back. And I get, because it's his dad. But if you're out there saying all you're talking about is how you want to emanate and be like FDR over and over and over, at some point someone's got to say, or Wilson or something like this, you got to go, hey, how about no? How about no on these guys? Okay. David Brady said you should get Dave Smith again or Phil Bishop. Now Dave would be great, but Phil Bishop, as an example, is he pro RFK? And Dave would be the person I'd want to kind of take on in this. And I don't really want to debate it. I just kind of want to push back. So Dave then has Liz Wolfe on there. They had RFK goes on with Reason. They have a lot of pushback. And then she does this other thing, and all the Mises Caucus types actually, or the Dave Smith types, which I am, take shots at her. And hey, you why didn't you say that when he was on the Reason? Well, it was a different person that did this. So I didn't really have a problem with what she said. Take this guy on. And here is the deal with RFK, why it's, I think, interesting, is because he's engaging. He's willing to have conversations with almost anybody. And that is an important part. And he's pushing it back against the Democratic narrative. So I don't have a problem with Reason at all. Pushing Reason just comes from their political perspective. And I think that the instinct is, because they're not always good faith actors, which is they're trying to blow him up so that Biden's more acceptable, maybe. I don't know. But I think why not blow him up? Because everyone is kind of simping for him. Okay. Adam says a based and principled libertarian is better than RFK. The rest. Okay. I agree. He is slightly pro RFK. You're talking about Dave. I imagine he wants RFK versus Trump VP. I don't know what you're saying there. I'm not anti RFK. I just have some problems with it. And when we push and we say, oh, he's a better libertarian than what it's like, no, you're talking, it's like this piece of crap smells a little better than this one. Maybe. I mean, it's not, but once again, the thing that's engaging about him, he goes on Dave's podcast. He's engaging. He's a nice guy, seemingly a nice guy. So I don't really have problems with some of that. Okay, let's get back into this. Mr. Kennedy is not the only victim of the censorship campaign, which is unprecedented in American history. But he is a high-profile victim, especially since he is now challenging President Biden for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. Mr. Kennedy often speaks at length about topics people would like to ignore, including the negative health effects of toxic chemicals and potential safety concerns about the COVID-19 shots, as well as all other vaccines that have been developed since Congress gave the pharmaceutical industry immunity from product liability and claims. Now, we're going to talk here this next one, and then I'm going to make a comment as well. YouTube often removes videos of Mr. Kennedy's comments from its public platform. It usually relies on its, quote, medical misinformation, quote, policies to justify the action. It has relied on the policy several times to censor interviews and speeches given by Mr. Kennedy during the 2024 presidential campaign, including a speech he gave at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire, in the state that hosts America's first primary. On information and belief, it did so based on statements from the Biden administration about what information to censor. It will continue to do so throughout the presidential campaign, especially as the primary election gets closer. Now, I had a video where Clint Russell came on the show and we took on, I think it was the Penn Jillette. The Penn Jillette interview with Nick Gillespie. It got taken down. I got a strike for that because of the things we had said about COVID, which I pushed back. It doesn't matter. They want that down. And so there it goes. And that, that's directly related to me as far as the kind of shit that YouTube and who knows, maybe this video will come down as well. And I'm a little teeny, as Black Mutualist was ripping me yesterday. Dude, this guy's insane. So I post up a thing with Dave Smith when he come on, because now Yaron Brooks taking on Tom Woods and saying some other shit. So I had a part of that when Dave Smith came on my show. And so I made a clip of that and I put it out. And then Black Mutualist says, oh, you should add me on. I would have done numbers. I'm like, you came on our kill pod and we got 100 views. It wasn't much. Then he starts going through all my things and like acting like that's one of my bigger shows. But no, I've had, thousands. Dave Smith was 3,000 views. And I'm like, compare it to that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. People are insane. I'd rather have 0 views than have him on as a guest, honestly. These actions are unlawful. U.S. Supreme Court has said that, quote, the right to think is the beginning of freedom, unquote, and that, quote, speech must be protected from the government because speech is the beginning of thought, unquote. These principles apply both when the government directly regulates speech and when, as it works behind the scenes to censor its critics through otherwise private actors. Plaintiffs bring this action to protect these principles and to preserve the ability to communicate with the Americans on matters of public concern. Parties, jurisdiction, and venue. Mr. Kennedy resides in New York. Google's a limited liability corporation. Let's take a look at this real quick. Is this filed in state or federal court? I didn't even take a look at this. Okay, Northern California district. Oh, this is mine. This is my district. Nice. Okay, so I'm not going to go through. Basically, it's just you hold out why you're filing it in here. Google's located up there. He's over there. So it can be a federal issue and incorporated in San Bruno, California. The court has jurisdiction over it. Venue is proper, blah, blah, blah. Factual allegations. YouTube has stated in 2005 by former PayPal executives who thought people would enjoy having a place to share their own videos. It was started by PayPal. Interesting. It was an instant success, so successful, in fact, that Google abandoned its own nascent video service and instead purchased YouTube for $1.65 billion a year after it launched. Since then, YouTube has become the most visited website in the world, and YouTube is one of the world's most valuable media companies with annual revenue that dwarfs the money earned by television execs. So I think YouTube is the #2 most visited website, and #1 is Google. So they've got a nice little monopoly there. The success has made YouTube a popular place to generate and view new content, particularly content related to public affairs. For example, in March 2016, YouTube announced that between April 2015 and March 2016, viewers had consumed roughly 100 million hours of of election-related content on YouTube, much of which has been viewed on mobile devices. Kate Stanford, the director of YouTube's advertising marketing at the time, made much of that, saying voters' decision used to be made in living rooms in front of televisions. Today, it's increasingly made in micro moments on mobile devices. So you're asking, why are they going over this? Well, they want to make sure that you understand that this is a big deal. Okay, you're not a minor player that is seemingly censored. Now, you shouldn't be doing that even if the government's pushing on you, but saying that this is out to the many, many people. It's very important. He's running for election for the president of the United States. He's registered as such. Therefore, when you are kind of the monopoly in this area, you have a more of a duty to adhere to the election campaign, issues. That's why they're kind of bringing this up. Political candidates seized on this development, spending millions of dollars in advertising original content on YouTube during the 2016 presidential election. That continued in 2020, and it will only increase during 2024 campaign, especially as more political commentators, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, for example, leave network and cable television to broadcast directly to Americans through internet and social media platforms. Yeah, they didn't mention Joe Rogan, but why not? Because Tucker Carlson isn't on YouTube. I mean, Megyn Kelly is. Thus, YouTube has become an important platform for political discourse in America, a digital town square that voters trust as a place to get views, opinions, issues of the day, a place where people can communicate about matters of public concern. Mr. Kennedy is a lawyer, son of former Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy. Okay, do we care? Mr. Kennedy didn't mention who his wife is. She's an actress. Mr. Kennedy is seeking the Democratic Party's nomination for president. He has filed the necessary paperwork with the Federal Election Commission and taking steps to qualify on the ballot of early primary states, including New Hampshire. He declared his candidacy on April 19, 2023. I don't know if you guys saw on when he testified before Congress how bad it's so interesting and telling that he's up there and his foes are his own party. And the people that he's aligned with, in a sense, are the Republicans. It's really, really odd. And I get that's perhaps why the GOP types like him. You know, he's kind of like a Tulsi Gabbard in a way. Before announcing his campaign, Mr. Kennedy took a strong stance against the Democrat National Committee's efforts to strip New Hampshire of its first in the nation primary, except that I don't know why we're caring about this. His criticism and questioning of the pharmaceutical industry over vaccines has been deemed controversial by some people, including government officials whose funding depends on pharmaceutical industry. But he spoke intelligently about his views for years, free of censorship, and with people like the former Comedy Central host Jon Stewart, who disagree with him, reflecting the principle fundamental to American democracy that more speech is better than less speech, especially when it comes to political speech. This is interesting how this complaint, it's a lot of fluffy stuff, right? I mean, I don't know. Let's get down to business, people. The fundamental principle, it'd be interesting to see how much law they throw in here, is under attack. It seems that they have started big tech companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, blame themselves for the, now this is very true. This is, I don't know if this is a necessary part to put in your complaint, but it's an interesting fact that I think really is why the TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, is so strong, coming from the big tech. And we saw the censorship after the fact because they blame themselves for allowing him to even be on their space and not doing more about it. Moreover, in 2018, Congress passed and the president signed into law the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency Act of 2018. This law created a new agency, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, within the Department of Homeland Security to protect America from cyber threats. According to CISA, its mission, quote, requires effective coordination and collaboration among a broad spectrum of government and private sector organizations, unquote. That's horrible. These organizations include YouTube, and CISA's mission apparently includes removing speech about issues of public concern that the federal government deems dangerous. So we went from cybersecurity to you don't speak the right thing on these platforms, and we should. I mean, this is Joe Walsh's wet dream. The coordination and collaboration between YouTube and the federal government include developing misinformation policies like the one YouTube has used and will continue to use to censor statements that Mr. Kennedy makes in the 2024 presidential campaign. For example, YouTube removed video of Mr. Kennedy's March 2023 speech at St. Anselm's, New Hampshire Institute of Politics that had been posted on the platform by Manchester Public Television. The station's director said, quote, YouTube will not allow us to post the video because of controversial vaccination content. MPTS has recorded more than 100 wonderful NHIOP events, and I kind of recall this happening before, unquote. YouTube doubled down on the decision, saying it, quote, removed the Kennedy speech for violating our policies on COVID-19 vaccination and misinformation. While we do allow content with educational, documentary, scientific, or artistic content, such as news reports, the content we removed from this channel was raw footage and did not provide sufficient context. That is just a true and correct copy of YouTube's COVID-19 misinformation policies attached as Exhibit A. I have a problem. So maybe it's different, but I'm pretty sure in the federal court as well, when you're the plaintiff, you use numbers for your exhibits. And when you're the respondent or the defendant, you use letters. So they should have used exhibit 1, 2, etc., but they went A. Just, I'll look at the local rule for that one, but that's typically standard in local rules for these. A true and correct copy of his vaccination policy as exhibit B. These policies are referred to collectively as YouTube's medical misinformation policies. Of course, only a portion of Mr. Kennedy's Manchester speech dealt with his views about vaccines or COVID-19. Much of his speech focused on the DNC's attempt to strip New Hampshire of its slot in the primary calendar, as well as Kennedy's history of environmental activism, including his successful efforts to clean up the Hudson River. YouTube removed everything. This is not an isolated incident. Mr. Kennedy declared his candidacy. YouTube has removed other videos of him speaking, including interviews he did with Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan. Again, although YouTube has cited its medical misinformation policies to justify these decisions, it has removed the entire video of Mr. Kennedy speaking. So just want to, so we got here. Jay Fort said, got a mo. Just saying hi, Tyler, dropping like that. Appreciate that. He's a good guy, by the way. I just kind of want to say, look, we're on Rumble. Just go over there, type LPR. You find the Libertarian Podcast Review. Check it out. At some point, StreamYard is going to be able to incorporate comments over on there. I usually try to look over there as well, and it's just going to have to happen. We're just going to have to stream over there. Look, Rumble does seem to be that conservative type of platform, but Odyssey, for some reason, just isn't working. So, I mean, it's okay. It's just not taking off. And Rumble, to me, has been doing much better. The algorithms push us a little bit better. So I would say go check that out. Maybe I need to see if we are getting anything over on Rumble, just to make sure that we're not screwing the pooch here. It's content. Let's see, Google. Here we go. Okay. No rants. Okay. That's the way it goes over there. Okay. There we go. The complaint. This trend will continue throughout the 2024 campaign. Unlike other tech companies, notably Facebook and Instagram, both owned by Facebook parent Meta, and Twitter, now owned by Elon Musk, YouTube has not treated Mr. Kennedy differently now that he is a political candidate. If anything, Mr. Kennedy's candidacy and the issues of public concern he speaks about have made him an even bigger target for public-private censorship regime that Google and YouTube are an integral part of. Now, the question would be, does he deserve to have special treatment? I don't believe so, but what I think is you can start to pinpoint that he is maybe singled out due to the fact he's running for president. So he's prominent, he's running for president, he's, you know, there are campaign laws about censorship. So he shouldn't be treated special, but I think you can at least pinpoint, look, I'm running for office. I'm saying things directly opposed to the government that's in power right now. Therefore, they're targeting me. Retaliation, First Amendment rights due to the government. There you go. Okay. The decisions to censor Mr. Kennedy on these matters of public concern were not made by YouTube, acting on its own accord, but as part of the partnership between YouTube and the federal government officials, including the Biden White House, to censor dissenting views that stated during COVID-19 pandemic. As documents discovered by 2 state attorneys general show, federal officials, including White House officials Rob Flaherty and Clark Humphrey, were the ones who directed tech companies to remove statements Mr. Kennedy made about the government's COVID policy. For example, a true and correct copy of an email showing Mr. Humphrey's demand that one tech company, Twitter, remove one of Mr. Kennedy's posts on January 2021 is attached as Exhibit C. Once again, I think it should be 3. Although this email targeted Twitter, White House and other government officials repeatedly worked with the big tech companies, including YouTube, to censor Mr. Kennedy during 2021, 2022. Indeed, by July 2021, the White House press secretary was calling on the tech platforms to ban Mr. Kennedy completely, and on information and belief, YouTube was working behind the scenes with CISA and other government officials to do just that. It is reasonable to believe that this partnership and the related White House pressure campaign increased after Mr. Kennedy challenged President Biden for the Democratic Party's nomination. So they talked about those 2 state attorneys general. Once again, I think one's Missouri. I'm trying to remember the other one, but there's some big stuff that's been coming out. One thing that's going to be interesting here as well. This is what happens. You file a lawsuit now, and unless the lawsuit is just summary judgment and it's kicked out, you are going to be allowed to do discovery. And under the laws and benefits of discovery, you're going to start to be able to get these emails and try to gather and see what's happened. And if the government's, been involved in this one. YouTube plays an essential important role in this public-private censorship regime, whether it is through advertising, interviews, or raw footage. YouTube provides people, especially political candidates, with unfettered access to American public. YouTube is not simply a tool of communication like a telephone or social media app. It is simply a publisher like New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. It is a place for people to view, to listen, and to learn about whatever they want. For the most part, they can do that without registering and without paying anything. They can simply log onto the platform and watch. Thus, YouTube is a digital equivalent of the town square. It is a platform for speech, and YouTube has monetized that role, earning billions of dollars for Google in the process. I would like to say, look, Section 230 does outline this, right? You're either a publisher or what's the other thing we're looking at here? Or you're doing editorial content, and they're doing a mixture of both. They want it both ways, and then that can't happen. I think 230 is a good thing to have because it's really allowed websites to go on and do good things, which before the problem was someone would put something in the comments, and now you're saying that the YouTube, as an example, was liable for things other people were saying or posting on the website about you. That's a problem. But they gave them some of this liability and saying, no, you're a publisher. You can just put it out there as you wish. But the problem is now they're editorializing and removing content that they, goes against their guidelines that they say, but their guidelines are matching the government. So it's a problematic issue that they have, and they're trying to have it both ways. And I'm not a fan of the, Steven Crowder that wants to blow up 230 or even PragerU. I know that at one time they were kind of pushing that, but anyway, here we are. With that reach comes responsibility, though. YouTube may own its website. In that sense, youtube.com is private property. But by allowing the public to post videos there, YouTube turned youtube.com into a public forum for a forum of some sort. Whether it's traditional public forum or limited public forum or something else does not matter. It cannot exclude people from the platform based on their viewpoint. Well, it can. The problem is it can't do it based on the government insisting that that's the case. It cannot decide which speech people hear. It cannot do that itself. And it especially cannot do that if it, as with the plaintiffs, based on public-private partnership in which YouTube relies on the government to decide what information to censor. Now, I mean, this is kind of an overbroad statement because they can. I mean, you can't just post kiddie porn as an example on there. You're going to get or incitement to violence. So things that are criminal, you're not going to be able to do on there. So you need, and I hope Kennedy's not, I mean, look, these are his attorneys. They're doing what they can. They're not trying to make a political thing. They're just trying to get him to have more access. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has historically construed the state action doctrine liberally, echoing Justice William Brennan's view that, quote, if the 14th Amendment is to have its intended effect as a restraint on the abuse of state power, courts must be sensitive to the manner in which state power is exercised. In an era of active government intervention to remedy social ills, the true character of the state's involvement in and coercive influence over the activities of private parties, often through complex and opaque regulatory frameworks, may not always be apparent. But if the task of the 14th Amendment assigns to the courts is thus rendered more burdensome, the court's obligation to perform the task faithfully, consistently, and with constitutional purpose is rendered more, not less important. Now, look. Let's say I'm your attorney. I don't believe the 14th Amendment extends to the states and it should not be incorporated and the Bill of Rights should not. Am I still going to use this for my clients? Yeah, absolutely. Because the courts believe it's incorporated and the courts use it like that. So they're going to do it as well. So I'm going to, of course, push on this as well. Could someone let Sirhan Sirhan out and tell him his job's not quite finished? That's Mac the Knife. Yeah, look, according to RFK, Sirhan Sirhan didn't do it. I don't know if you know that. All right. Funny comment there, by the way. Those words echo today. This will be the last presidential election before America's 250th birthday. Who fucking cares? Much has changed since 1776. Yes, it has. The country's demand for freedom of speech, especially political speech, should not be one of them. Okay. First claim for relief. Here we go. Injunctive relief under 42 USC 1983 State Action Doctrine, which is what I kind of led with my own Substack. Mr. Kennedy incorporates paragraphs 1 through 29 of this complaint as set forth fully herein. When Mr. Kennedy speaks about the federal government's COVID-19 policies, as he has in the Manchester speech and in interviews over the campaign trail, he is engaging in speech on matters of public concern that are protected by the First Amendment. Although YouTube is a private non-governmental party, it violated Mr. Kennedy's First Amendment rights when it removed videos of his political speech as alleged above in several ways. Back up just a tad bit. I did mention PragerU. I know they sued Google and YouTube a few years ago, and I think that case was thrown out of court. The problem I don't think they ever got to was such information that we have had now, which are direct, Twitter files. We have the same with Facebook now, and these other ones. Like I said, these attorneys general that for 2 different states have been able to acquire documents. Hang on. First, there is a sufficiently close nexus between YouTube and the federal government, such that YouTube's actions may be fairly treated as that of government itself. For example, although it cited its own COVID vaccine misinformation policies when censoring Mr. Kennedy, the policies rely entirely on government officials to decide what information gets censored. They say that YouTube does not allow people to say anything, quote, that contradicts local health authorities, LHA, or the World Health Organization, WHO, medical information about COVID-19, unquote. These policies are subject to change, but only, quote, in response to changes to global or local health authorities' guidance on the virus, unquote. In other words, the government provides the rules that guide YouTube's enforcement on medical misinformation policies. Second, YouTube's misinformation policies were developed as a part of the joint enterprise between YouTube and the federal government officials to prevent Americans from hearing people like Mr. Kennedy who disagreed with the government's policy decisions. YouTube had no obligation to act as the government's censor. But after the creation of CISA, and especially after President Biden took office, YouTube decided to partner with the federal government to censor dissenting voices about COVID-19 in a way the federal government insinuated itself into such a position of interdependence with YouTube that they will be deemed joint participants in censorship game. The partnership consists of a complex and deeply intertwined process between the Fed, YouTube, led by the government, which plays an outsized role in the decision about what information is, quote, dangerous and which speakers, especially Kennedy, need to be silenced. Okay, look, I'm having trouble enjoying this because these guys are not getting to the point. They're saying a lot of stuff over and over. And I'm not a fan of you taking extra time and saying extra words to get a fact across. Okay, so this is getting a little frustrating. Again, these are not conclusory allegations, but facts that have been revealed in other litigation against big tech platforms, including emails from the 2021 Biden White House officials discussed alleged vaccine misinformation and ways the White House can partner with big tech companies to produce with tech companies in product work. A true and correct copy of such email is attached as Exhibit D. Once again, I think this should be 4. This partnership has targeted Mr. Kennedy from day one in the Biden administration, but on information and belief, it has increased since Mr. Kennedy challenged the president politically. When engaging in this partnership, YouTube did not act in good faith to promote its own business, but to fulfill the government's objective in preventing people from hearing Kennedy's comments. It was fulfilling the government's censorship. It will continue to do that. Indeed, that YouTube is the only one of the big tech platforms that is still censoring Mr. Kennedy during his political campaign. Third, the federal government has ensured that YouTube cooperate in its censorship campaign to publicly demand that it do so by accusing it of killing people when it does not cooperate, and by threatening to take away certain legal protections that YouTube has under the federal law, namely immunity under Section 230 and the Communications Decency Act. Indeed, YouTube bases its right to censor people on Section 230. We just talked about that. Thus, a federal law, Section 230, is the very source of authority through which tech censorship occurs, a situation in which the Supreme Court has found state action to exist. So if they're threatening to take that away, that's obviously incentive, right? Through this public and private pressure, the federal government has offered such significant encouragement, both overt and covert, that YouTube's decision to censor Mr. Kennedy's political speech must be deemed to have been made by the government itself, including Kennedy's political opponent, President Biden. Under these circumstances, YouTube is a state actor, and it violated Mr. Kennedy's First Amendment right by engaging in viewpoint discrimination, as alleged above. In addition, at least with respect to fully public aspects of this platform, YouTube operates as a public forum, the digital equivalent of a town square. I'm not a big fan of that. As such, it cannot remove protected speech, especially political speech, based on its viewpoint. Furthermore, any viewpoint neutral rules must be narrowly tailored to leave open ample alternative channels for communication. YouTube admittedly does not comply with these rules. Yeah, so First Amendment rights, it's a fundamental right. So you're going to talk about strict scrutiny. I guess that's what they're looking at there. YouTube's medical misinformation policies also violate the First Amendment on their face because they are overbroad and vague. Okay, true. You can't do that. Indeed, the policies give YouTube and its government partners unfettered discretion to decide what information they censor, including what they say the speech lacks, quote, context. Thus, the policies violate both the overbreadth and void for vagueness doctrines. Unlike other tech companies, YouTube has refused to remove its misinformation policies and has refused to stop censoring Mr. Kennedy during his political campaign. Thus, there's a substantial likelihood that this will continue censoring Mr. Kennedy, preventing his political message from reaching millions of American voters. And this is the part that they're trying to do on the injunctive relief, which is stop this from happening going forward. And what you have to do with that is show there's irreparable damage if something doesn't take place now. So one of the parties is going to be irreparably damaged if you don't put a stay on this. That's an example. Oh, well, look here. Mr. Kennedy will be irreparably harmed if the court does not grant injunctive relief, prohibiting YouTube from censoring him during his political campaign. Now, I'm not a fan of what that statement says for one reason. It's a declaratory statement. It just says you shouldn't do this or you have done this. But why? You didn't say why. Maybe he's going to say that in here, but it's a seminal error of attorneys at times, which is I'm going to make a statement and I'm not going to say because and then put in some supporting facts as to why you're being harmed. Okay. He brings this action to seek such relief as to prohibit YouTube from enforcing its unconstitutional medical misinformation policies against him while he is seeking office. Second claim for relief, declaratory judgment. Mr. Kennedy incorporates paragraphs 1 through 29 of the law. Contends that medical misinformation policies are unconstitutional on their face and as applied to him during his presidential campaign because they are impermissibly vague, overbroad, and because they give unnamed government officials who the policies depend entirely on the unfettered discretion to decide what information gets removed from YouTube. So he's saying declaratory relief on this one for misinformation, on information and belief. Let's see if we can skip. Judicial determinate, USC 28, USC 2020, section 2020-01, a judicial determination of these issues is necessary and appropriate because such a declaration will clarify the parties' rights and obligations, permitted them to have certainty regarding those rights and potential liability and avoid a multiplicity of actions. Prayer for relief. Here we go. For an order declaring the defendants violated Mr. Kennedy's rights under the First Amendment when they used information from, partnered with federal government officials, including those who work for Mr. Kennedy's political opponents, to censor his political speech. I think that's the big one right there. For an order requiring that YouTube restores any videos of Mr. Kennedy's political speech that it has removed during the 2024 presidential campaign. For an order declaring YouTube's medical misinformation policies to be unconstitutional on their face as applied to Mr. Kennedy during his presidential campaign, and for an injunctive injunction prohibiting defendants from further enforcing them. For cost and legal fees under 42 USC section 1988, and for other relief the court deems necessary. Attorney, they want a jury trial. Anyway, it's going to take a while to get there. Let's see what the exhibits are. COVID misinformation policy. I don't necessarily want to go through that. That's with YouTube. YouTube doesn't allow content that spreads medical misinformation, that contradicts. See, and this is where they're getting at. They're specifically saying, we're not letting you go against any kind of government statements. YouTube's policy on COVID-19 are subject to change in response to changes at global, local. And that's what I'd complained about with my thing with Clint. I'm like, what you're stating then was it's not an issue now. Anyway, what this means for you, if you're posting, this is just blatant bull crap. Let's see if we get any other things here. Vaccine misinformation policy. Don't post content on YouTube if it includes harmful misinformation about currently approved and administered vaccines of any of the following: vaccine safety, content alleging that vaccines cause chronic side effects outside of rare side effects that are recognized by health. This is just efficacy of vaccines, content claiming that vaccines do not reduce transmission of contraction or disease. Are you fucking kidding me? Ingredients of vaccines. Okay. This is crazy stuff. I had COVID once. That's it. So here's Clark. Thanks. Let's see. And then let's see here how this goes. Hey folks, wanted to flag the below tweet and wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP. And then if we can keep an eye out for tweets that fall in this same genre, that would be great. Holy crap. I mean, I read the Twitter files. That's pretty damning. That's from the White House, or Clark Humphrey. Thanks. Recently escalated this. That's what Twitter said. And look, Twitter at Twitter.gov and at policy. That's where Twitter files got those. Robert Flaherty says White House staff will be briefed on Twitter on vaccine misinfo, Twitter to cover trends seen generally around vaccine misinformation, the tangible effects seen from recent policy changes, what interventions are currently being implemented, in addition to previous policy changes and the ways the White House can partner in product. I don't know what that's. There's some sort of Zoom. So look, that's it. They didn't really have emails and attach them for the YouTube themselves. They went to Twitter. So I know there's information there. They needed to kind of have that nexus to show that a little bit better. That would have probably been something I would have been. And so there you go. Is this going to take place? Look, this is my what I have been saying about what my Substack was about, which is the involvement of the government so harshly. And we saw that and the Twitter files were genius as far as a scoop, so to speak. So Elon Musk comes in there, starts releasing documents, and you started to see that the government is just heavy hand in all this. And I think it's good to push back and to be able to push back against that. And to not just take this as, I mean, because otherwise, I would be all for it's a private business. But when the private businesses are like they are, and they're getting worried about getting shut down, then you've got a problem. And by the way, I'm going to break this down. I'm going to go over the Angela, I almost said Lansbury. That's not right. Angela McArdle interview with Joe Walsh. We're going to walk through that whole thing as well, because he was very disingenuous, and I'm going to start tracking when he says one thing on one side and then he's against it on the other. He's woke, and I don't care what his definition is. He came out, he wants to bully people. He only wants you to have certain opinions. He's already decided what those opinions are. He doesn't argue in good faith. Exactly like Joe Bishop Henchman and Andy Craig when they came out after the Mises caucus took over the Libertarian Party, and that progressive, trying to remember whether liberal, progressive, whatever podcast that I reviewed, and they're so hung up on a Dave Smith is a Nazi type of thing. It's just, it's bad. And by the way, you call them bad names like that, so you don't have to think about any of their positions. You don't have to listen to their positions anymore because you've called them a Nazi. Therefore, I don't have to listen to them. I don't have to engage in any of their conversations. By the way, I was somewhat critical, and Dave Brady, if you're still in here, you were too, I know, about taking on like Caitlin Johnston. I am not, she can be anti-war all she wants. I agree with that part, but there's no way I'm going down the road with her on almost everything else. She's a commie. She doesn't like free markets. And at what point are the libertarians or any of these other people, liberty people, going to use these people like RFK rather than being used by them? And that's my biggest strong point is when you have a chance and you're part of this, you got to preach your economics as well. Take what they have, but it's always these people taking over us and using us or whomever. And then, you know, I think that's the anti-war movement for the Vietnam era was, right? We got used. If you didn't want to be in Vietnam, it was all about, and Tom Woods, by the way, I did that whole Tom Woods week. Fantastic. You should go check it out. Episodes, I don't remember what it was, but it was 8 days of Tom Woods. He did finally recognize it and said, hey, I might need to promote this. I said, yeah, you need to promote this. How about having me on? My point is he talks about this in one of his interviews he does with Pete Quinones, actually on Pete Quinones' show. He's like, you know, in the communist and the left influence in the anti-war movement was so strong, it was kind of difficult to overcome. And by the way, so that's just kind of my thing with JFK or RFK at this point as well. Okay. I think that's enough for today. Let's do any kind of, nothing over on, nothing over on Rumble. Let me go. I'm going to go to X or Twitter. I've got some bookmarks over here that I kind of wanted to look at and see if there's anything we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about Jack Smith and his indictment of Trump. I think at some point we'll talk about that because that to me is, look, Trump is it doesn't do himself favors. Something comes out, he gets indicted, and then he does stupid stuff on Truth, and then he said, hey, you come after me, I come after you. So now they're like trying to do I don't know, some sort of stay over there or have him remanded into custody, I think is what it is, because he's threatening people. And I was like, can you just shut up, right? I know you're riling up the base. There are arguments, legal arguments to be had that the impeachment process, once you're president and maybe even a government official, the only remedy to have against, remember, it's high crimes and misdemeanors. Misdemeanors can be walking across the street, right? And we don't know what high crimes and what misdemeanors might be, but what we have to understand, the argument can be out there that if you're the president, you don't want to politicize the courts, and that is not the place for that to happen. And the only remedy to come after a president and or former president is through the impeachment process. You don't get to go and start indicting him. So it will be interesting. Maybe the court will. Migu, thanks for coming to Jack Smith reading the indictment press release like it was a hostage video. Yeah, I didn't see it, but I should probably go through that. It's been a bit of a day going through some of this. So there's that. There's also Jack Smith. Maybe we'll play this. I do want to see this. I'm gonna pull this up here real quick. Let's see here. This is what's his name? He's a Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald posted this up here. Okay, so let's go to this. He plays this clip of Nora ODonnell.
The court and meet Jack Smith is what. Let's listen to this.
Push the button. There you go.
We've just been told that Donald Trump has entered the courtroom. Also in the courtroom is the special counsel, Jack Smith. And I want to spend a moment on Jack Smith because he is essentially who Donald Trump is up against in multiple of these indictments. The two, of course, the classified documents and the January 6th one. And they are sitting across from each other inside this courtroom. Jack Smith is someone who has run over and competed in over 100 triathlons.
I mean, why would you say that? You're on air live on a network news show. You're talking about a criminal case brought by this prosecutor whose allegations are supposed to be subject to critical scrutiny. He's trying to put someone in prison.
Should I wear a tie?
Donald Trump is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And within 15 seconds after starting to talk about him, you start talking about his athletic hobbies. Let's listen to more.
Push the button. Come on, Glenn.
He was reportedly at one point hit when he was on his bike by a truck. And 10 weeks later, he ran another triathlon.
Okay. He's Superman. He gets hit by a truck. The truck runs him over. Hospital. He got up. Another off.
See if they go any more here. All right, flipping through. There we go.
Very impressed by this, Nora ODonnell of CBS News is.
This is a man of a lot of grit and a lot of determination.
Yeah, she's hot. She's moist for this.
He's a man of all. This is a man.
Okay, I'm gonna stop doing that. So, look, I'll just say, as someone who's been hit by cars, I've had a lot of bike wrecks. Broke my neck and my back about 2 years ago now. There's some bike wrecks you don't get up from, like the one I broke my neck and my back, and some that you get. I had a pretty good one. I did get hit by cars coming down a hill pretty fast. Car at the bottom. There's no parking. They just stopped in the middle of the road, and I had to lock it up. I high-sided it, hit the back of the car. I was hurt, but I went on the next week. There was a big race in Oregon, and I did really well. So you can come back from some. It depends on what the wreck is. So she makes it sound like he got run over by a dump truck. These people are insatiable. They're horrible. What else do we have here? Let me see. Shut up there, Glenn. Let's go to my bookmarks because there's a bunch of these things, and then we'll get out of here. So there's Glenn. I thought I did see this. This is pretty good here. Let's add this to the stream. It looks like this is Tower Gang in a fight. So here we go. Look at that. It's Toad and Top Lobster right there. Okay, I don't know what the fuck that is. It's bitch slapping as in its best. Okay, everybody, that's Tyler Yonke out. We're gonna do that's RFK. His lawsuit. I'm very interested about this for a lot of reasons. So we'll see how this plays out. Other than that, I think. Let's remove that. And we'll stop the screen. Okay, so other than that, we'll be back. Andy has a job. He's supposed to be starting to stream with me. He says, I think, Thursdays work best. So therefore I did a Friday stream, and now I'm doing a Sunday stream, and hopefully he'll be with us soon. There we go. Other than that, I've got nothing else to offer. I totally love hanging out with you guys, doing some of this stuff. So those of you who came in here, I appreciate it. Few updates. Let's see. Nick Gillespie has been on my radar. I've been back and forth with him. He's supposed to come on. Legal Mindset. He said he was coming on, and then the night he was coming on, something happened. I'm thinking I want to get Brian McWilliams on again. Maybe talk about JFK or RFK. He's now the communications director, I think, with the LP. So that'll be interesting. We're gonna do Angela McCardle's breakdown video coming up pretty soon. I want to do that this week. That's my goal there. Andy will be with me. We'll see who else maybe get in here on that one. Other than that, have a good weekend, everybody, and good week tomorrow.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
And now.
Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast. I can't find it anywhere. And they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke. Yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me, I'll...
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger.
Like,
I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.